I'd like to bring this work session to order. I'm going to ask Alderman Davis to do the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Creator God, we thank you for the blessings you bestow upon Southport and all who live, work, and visit here. We ask that you guide us today to make good and right decisions about how best
So the next agenda item is to approve the agenda. And then, that's okay. I would entertain a motion to have a couple of additional items added to the agenda that I think most of you have seen in emails that came to us. One is to add the announcement of the city manager selection. One is to discuss the MOU with the Up Your Arts. And the other last part is to pick dates for public hearing on the budget, which before that we have a final budget meeting to take place. So we have to pick dates for that. So I would entertain three topics. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? No. Yes, sir. The motion add to the agenda the announcement of the manager, a discussion about the MOU with Up Your Arts, and the third topic is two different things. One is picking a date for a public comment on the budget. Before we do that, we have to pick a date for the final budget decision on our part. All right. All those in favor say aye, please.
we didn't have discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you call for some discussion?
But if you want to have some discussion, go ahead.
Only about the order of events. Should
Okay.
we announce the city manager before we the contract? Again? Okay. In concept, we have accepted the contract for the new city manager. However, we haven't formally done that, and until we do that, I don't think we should announce who the city manager
That's what's on your agenda, is the contract.
I know. Is the addendum in closed session in public?
That's up to you guys.
I
I think everybody's in agreement with the contract.
I think so.
How about this? All right, to go forward with, you wanted to go with the city?
You got Rebecca?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, let's do the city manager contract. You all have had an opportunity to look at that. There was a change for some money, additional money for moves, which is significant. So favor of the contract that you were given. I would take a motion to. There's a motion and a second. Aye. Any opposed? No, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I am looking for. Apologize, I've misplaced something here. And that is the discussion on the.
You may want to say who this person is.
I'm going to entertain a motion to offer the job of city manager to Stuart Terrell, Jr., to be effective July 2nd, 2024, as outlined in the attached contract. Second is motion. Any those who are watching online or the press, we had 2 interviews with Mr. Terrell, a series of contacts were made with former employees that worked with Mr. Terrell. I think there was at least a dozen of them we called and got input from. And based on all of that information, this board is going to vote now to offer that contract to him. I'm not sure there's a requirement because it's in the.
Not a requirement, but I'm sure,
They're going to ask for it.
what's the word I'm trying to think of? People wish to know, that wasn't the comment I was thinking of. Inquiring minds want to know that.
Annual salary of 100. And as I said, it starts July 2nd. Any other?
Lives in Southport.
Yes, he's going to reside in the city, within the city limits of Southport. He has agreed to that. There's some moving expenses that we have added to it. With the course of doing business, bring somebody in.
For the public, we interviewed multiple candidates across the country. We cast a very wide net. There was nothing untoward or secret. In fact, that we've been talking about this in public. The we interviewed all have jobs. Then they were not interested in publicizing the fact that they were interviewing here, as that would not have gone over well if they weren't selected. This has been a long, careful, very long process, and we have reached consensus that Mr. Terrell is the right person for the job.
A follow-up to Alderman Davis's comments. 72 people applied for the job, which I believe we interviewed 5 of them, and Mr. Terrell twice. So that's how wide the net was, and after careful deliberation, this decision is before us. So, any other comments?
Did or did not have the qualifications we were looking for, so we immediately pushed them aside, and we narrowed it down to what we thought were the most qualified candidates in the decision. And as Alderman Davis said, it was a long, drawn-out process.
And yes, the other thing, I believe I'm correct in saying that there were no in-house candidates, right? Okay.
And the process has been made easier this time because we have a full-time professional HR director, and we have somebody on the board now that has extensive experience in HR issues that we can lean on to help us understand that stuff. So all good stuff moving forward. So with that said, any other comments? Awarding the contract to Mr. Terrell, please say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much. For those who are on the screen, just so you know, is not here in person. She is here virtually and also voted in the affirmative for the contract. The next issue is the rate committee discussion.
You have the justification and explanations, and then you also have the revised fee, master fee schedule that we looked at the rate committee meeting. So I'll just go through those pretty quickly. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. For community relations, we have not historically charged for Indian Trail Meeting Hall, so that is one of the items we would like to add. We worked on this a little bit at the rate committee and tweaked it, so instead of having unlimited usage, for the yearly fee, you have 12 reservations a year for $300. If you're nonprofit, it goes up if you're a local business, and then for others, it's even greater than that. Reservations are for a period of 2 hours, and then additional hours will be charged on an hourly basis. There's no changes proposed for police or animal protective services. Public utilities, as you know, pending the merger, we're going to be losing all of the rates for the tap fees, installations, deposits, utility rates, but the only thing that's going to stay is recycling and yard debris, and that's going to be increasing to $12.75 a month because our cost is going up, so we'll kind of break even on that. For building inspections, there are a few things that we have not been charging for permits, including hoods for residential. That includes the duct and ventilation test. That's going to be a new permit. Bathroom vents is a new permit. Homeowners recovery fee, we've been charging for that, but it has not typically been in the fee schedule, so we made sure that was in there this time. Of the $10, we have to send $9 off to the state, and we only get to keep $1. Starting work without a permit fee, there's a minimum of $200. It's usually 2 times the basic permit fee. Occupying a structure without a certificate of occupancy is $100 a day. Commercial pre-stocking fee is $100. ABC inspection is $100, and then a temporary certificate of occupancy would be $50 for residential and $100 for commercial. Minor subdivisions is increasing to $500. Accessory dwelling units and as a special use permit, that type of special use permit is fairly simple to work on and bring forward to the Board of Adjustment. So we're proposing a reduction of that fee. It would have been the same price as the other special use permit, which is $750. We propose to reduce that to $250. And then the variance would increase to the same price as a special use permit, which is $750. Certificate of appropriateness is on here, but there's no fees proposed yet because we'll be adding that one. A text amendment or map amendment will be $300. Mobile food vendors would be $100 for a year. We added the tree removal penalty fees to the fee schedule this year. And then we're also proposing a residential storm plan review, which we have not done, and that's pending the stormwater ordinance that we're planning to bring forth soon. Tom Z helped me work out those fees, and it's based on some similar things he's done, but we're starting low and then see how that goes, and we can always increase it later. Also a soil import and export fee. Let's see. Taylor Field will be added to the Parks and Recreation fee schedule, and that's at the same rate that Franklin Square Park was at. And then the golf cart permit was increased to $50. And additionally, the filming fees, we've increased that just a little bit to $250 filming per day, and then if you leave your equipment on location, it's $100 per non-filming days. The J.C.'s building was increased to $200 a day, and we also added public services equipment on here and staff, so they could be reimbursed like the police and the fire do. Do you have any questions? Okay.
Ask the questions to you or to the rate committee? Okay. Filming fees. Did you all look at what adjacent towns, specifically Wilmington, which gets an awful lot of filming activity, to see how we stack up against that? It still seems low to me, considering the amount of disruption, street closures, and so on. I mean, if they're not on city property, they're only paying $250 a day.
We did discuss that in the rate committee, and we discussed whether the board wanted to try to encourage filming or not. So that would affect the proposed rates.
What did y'all decide?
Decided to leave it to this board to decide whether or not they're going to discourage it. No, it's a policy decision that this board has to decide on, is that in the past, the city's stance has been, had very low rates, $100 to close a street, and whatever it was. So the question is that was to encourage more movies. The board has to make a decision whether or not the rates that were given are still I would think, would encourage them to come here. Is that what you want? And there are issues with that. If you're a businessman and they're closing the street down, and correct me, Dorothy, if I say this incorrectly, is that you have to negotiate with the movie company. And you're at the whim of them because they've already got the permit. So I guess they can try to cancel it, but I've never heard anybody ever trying to cancel it, not because they were happy, because I've heard that they were unhappy, depending on what kind of business you're in. Not all businesses are alike. Go ahead, Rebecca.
So the $250 a day for filming fee, does that include road closure, or is that just to be able to film in Southport?
That includes the whole permit, I believe. If they're renting equipment, then that would be a separate fee. Or if they're using one of our facilities, that's a separate fee.
Okay, so at this time, $250, they can close the entire South House Street block. Those business owners get nothing for it, but there is no foot traffic on that block,
Actually,
as I understand it. Is that correct?
That's not correct. We just learned recently that when a film is coming in, they have to negotiate with the business owner if they're going to be using that storefront or that area. And our permits don't get signed off on until we have everybody's approval that's going to be involved in it.
So I've worked for large hotels for most of my career, and the film companies, when they came into one of the hotels and closed the lobby for a day, we got paid $25,000 for them to close a lobby for the day. So I think this $250 is laughable for us to close a road, and certainly for our business owners to then have to negotiate their own stuff, and then for our citizens to have to deal with it and go around what's going on.
So interesting to be on this committee and to see the details. We're sort of a la carte with our movies. The base rate to put a camera and walk around Southport is $200. If you're at the city pier, it might be, I think it's 1,000 or something like that. Each of our assets, if they put their assets, they tie our assets down, we get paid for that asset. Tom and I, all of us, we even discussed how we were going to rent barricades to them. If you didn't bring your barricades, we've got them for this price. And so if we're going to do business, we're going to get paid to do business, is the mentality I took as part of one of three people. So it is an à la carte thing. It's, you look at those details, they stack on each other. But I do think it's cheap. And when it comes to looking at everybody else has not got the mouth of the Cape Fear River. We have a special item, and we got to market it that way.
A larger discussion about whether we are looking to entice more filming here or whether we don't. I mean, the benefits of doing this 10, 15 years ago were obvious, and especially thanks to Safe Haven and that series, The Summer I Turned Pretty. But those two things have brought many, many people to Southport. Is that what we're looking for now? And I hear a lot of complaints from business people. I concur with what Rebecca said. Personally, I could not leave my house for over 4 hours when they were doing one little scene for The Summer I Turned Pretty. Problem? Oh, okay. And I know businesses that were stuck, and I was not negotiated with. They just left me a note saying, the 2 streets that let me get out of my house, these will be closed the afternoon of such and such. So there I was. And a number of businesses have told me that this has been their experience as well. From what I heard, I believe he was saying that one of the new things would be that they would have to negotiate. Okay, what if I said no? They would not have been able to film that scene.
So one of the questions that I still am fuzzy on is who does the coordination to ensure that all the businesses, one, know what their rights are, and two, know what the policy is that this happens. I don't know, I've never been told who that would be that would go there and say, here's a piece of paper, this is the policy, this is what we do, you negotiate. Is it one person, as Alderman Davis has talked about? Do they get to say that the road is not going to be closed? Does it have to be more than one? How does that work? All of those things were unclear, at least unclear to me when we were having those conversations, because I didn't know who was in charge. Like, who does that?
Chief, do you
That
have?
goes, I think that Alderman Davis is getting to the fundamental question, which is, do we want to encourage that type of activity or not? And I would personally say it's better to discourage that type of activity in our small town.
For the first half hour, watching the teenager bicycle down in front of my house, drop the bicycle, and run out on the dock. Okay, on the 187th take of that, it wasn't fun anymore.
No, so something to add to that is, as a teenager here in Southport, I was able to do extra work on lots of films and TV shows, and it was a great experience, and there are many others who grew up here who had the same experience. And that's certainly something unique that we were able to have because of our interest in the film industry at the time. I will say when the films are coming in now, they bring in their own catering. They bring in their people to do things. They do hire locals for extra work and some other smaller things usually. But our restaurants are not getting the benefit of the additional people in town. Our other businesses are not getting the additional patrons through them during filming because there are more people here. It becomes sort of the people working on the film are sort of sequestered within their area during that time rather than being part of the community at the time, unless they're here like the feature films, you know, when they were here for months and months, and then that kind of changes a little bit. But when we're only looking at a day or two, we're not seeing really more than the economic impact of that $250 filming fee and whatever $200 for the JC building or the police officers on duty or public service staff that have to be there for Southport.
Let me ask a question of the manager first. There is, if we were to carve this out, this one part of the fee structure, and move forward, because it does not going to impact the overall budget that much at all, could we, is that an option to do that and approve the other parts of the fee so that we can get perhaps even more, and I'm not, we can do it today. I know where I stand on the whole issue. I'm not going to use the word discourage films. I'm going to say that we get the full market value, as Mark would say, full market value of what Southport is. And the bigger companies can pay that because their budgets are gazillion dollars. But can we carve this out for a different discussion date?
Yeah, you certainly could. I mean, the only thing is if we get a call for a movie tomorrow or today, then we'll use the rates that are there, and then we'll just continue. And then you can have the discussion whenever.
And it can be after, this discussion can be after the June 13th date that we
Yes.
have to put the budget in, because it's not going to
We'll put
impact
on
it.
a future agenda.
Because I think there's a lot of discussion that I really want to, I want input from the businesses. I want to see how that works. I want to really have a better understanding of the resources that we get used for police. Is there an issue with how big the event has to be before we have to, or should, by common practice, have EMS standing by? They do that all over the world. That's what they do. So all of those issues, I'm not sure, I'm not prepared to opine on them because I'm not smart enough on the topic yet. So I would entertain a motion that we approve the fee schedule as it is, absent the motion picture part. And then after we get done with that, I would entertain a motion that we set a date for a workshop where we specifically ask people to come. I mean, proactively, not just stick it in a little ad someplace in a newspaper, and see what the citizens and the businesses, how they are able to manage this whole thing. So my first motion I would entertain is to approve the fee schedule absent the movie part of it.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
What is the problem with taking the movie fees as we've changed them? Just because of
And then change them
controversy?
again, maybe? I mean, we'll have this done, hopefully, before the next movie comes in, okay? So we have a motion and a second on the fees absent the movie part of it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next motion I would entertain is that we set a date. We don't set a date. We work with the manager to set a date to discuss the movie part, where we ask businesses to come in and other interested parties to talk about this issue. So I'm entertaining that motion. Okay. The motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
So the date is to be determined. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. The next topic on the agenda is the methods to close the budget gap, and the manager has that part.
Yes, this is still a work in progress. We will definitely have a lot more information June 6th. But since you're meeting on Tuesday, Lance is going to kind of give an overview of where you're at with some of your decisions, and also where some other thoughts that Lance and Dory and I have come up with. So I'll turn it over to him. One thing I just want to remind you, we have got to end this meeting at 10:30 because there's the employee recognition event. So if you can start thinking in your mind after Lance is done, where do you want to go next? Because I got the fire chief, and I know you got a lot of questions for him. He's here, and we'll go over the other questions too. So here, why don't you start, and I'll hand these out.
We'll get this whole thing done before 10:30.
Okay, so Bonnie's just handing out I've struggled a little bit with how to put in on one piece of paper, a snapshot, an overview of all the complexities that are going on with this budget. But I think this, we can walk through this. If you start under the box that's got a yellow stripe above it called proposed operating budget, and you look at the first column, which has an A above it, this is where we were before we started the deliberation last week. This week on Tuesday, we had $12 million worth of revenue, not counting the use of the $1.2 million. We had a $13.2 million, $3 million operating expense budgets. We had a gap of $1.169 million, basically $1.2 million, which we were plugging with the $1.2 million carryover from the water sewer fund. You step over to the next column called B, which are adjustments. These are things that have happened since Tuesday. And I will start with the bottom line saying the budget gap closed by $310,000 altogether, so that we currently have a budget gap that we would use, in theory, the water sewer money of $858,000. Now, to talk about the adjustments for a second that have happened. The up in revenue, these are two revenue adjustments that the board did not discuss on Tuesday. The first one is on Wednesday, the mayor was handed by the county some updated property valuation estimates. And I think I communicated earlier to you that the prior county estimates were low. They looked low in context of what we're getting in real time. The new numbers look and when you apply the current tax rate with no tax increases just to that valuation that was handed out on Wednesday, would actually mean we would generate $273,000 more in revenue than was in the budget. So no increase to tax, just the natural amount would go up by $273,000, which is good news in budget gap closure. The bad news, the $100,000 below, is a reduction to permitting fees. And I will tell you, this is going to confuse you a little bit. This is something that we discovered about 24 hours ago. There's an anomaly going on in our accounting system that has been going on from what we can tell, since November of 2021. It involves when a person comes in with a new construction that they're paying the water, sewer, impact fees, they're paying the tap fees, all that. If they pay with a credit card, there's a data transfer. There has been a data transfer going on between the permitting system that takes in the money and the accounting system that has been booking everything to development, to inspection fees, and nothing to the water sewer development fees. And that's only for credit card transactions. It's not if somebody comes in with a check, that's a different process. So far this fiscal year, and we have 7,000 or 8,000 lines of data to review. But what we think, based on what we've seen so far in fiscal 24, we have recorded $101,000 worth of what should have been development fees and recorded them as inspection fees. So the development fees, the impact fees, belong in the water sewer fund. That money belongs to the merger. So we need to move that, and we were budgeting on top of that. So our current year budget, the one we're discussing now for FY '25, needs to be adjusted down by this $100,000 because of this data transfer between systems that has been going on since November of 2021. When we look back into last year, into the closed year, fiscal '23, the number I have right now, which is still being looked at, is about $120,000 that went the wrong way. So we're gonna have to work with the LGC and how we reopened last year's closed and audited budget to make that correction, because it would actually impact money going to Brunswick County in the merger. And then if you go back into the prior year, beginning with November 21, which was fiscal '22, it was a small amount. I don't remember off the top of my head, it was like $20,000 or something like that. So we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $240,000, $50,000 of transactions that came through on credit cards that the dollars flowed to the wrong place. Like I said, I ran across this about 24 hours ago. It's a work in progress, but we've got to get this into the budget. So, okay. Any questions on that before I go forward? Yes, sir?
Is it possible to ask for a Maya Cola from the county and say we negotiate on that total fee?
Anything's possible, can only ask.
Well, I want to ask that question to find out. If we were trying to hide it, we got caught, we had some savings. We were trying to hide it. Maybe there's a happy medium somewhere along the line.
Lance and I will talk to Mr. Stroll and finance director.
This doesn't sound like something we did incorrectly. It's just an anomaly in the system.
It's a software
Yeah.
problem that no one was aware of.
Going forward. And you've retired again. Now, how does this get transferred, that these are the types of things that we have to actually do a real accounting at the end of the year to figure out, did we do it correctly? I don't know how you do that.
Well, I mean, in this particular instance, the first thing you have to do is correct the handoff from one system to the other. I mean, that's job number one.
We can also ask the auditor to pay particular attention to this during the audit, but with the new software coming in, we're just gonna have to make sure, and I think it definitely can do a better job than what we have.
From the $230,000 in its credit card, how much do we lose on that to pay the credit card company?
Zero.
Okay.
The customer, the person making the payment, it never even runs through our books. It's an independent transaction. They pay a fee to the credit card company. It never runs through our books at all. Okay. All right. So the operating expenses down below, I'm looking now at column B under the yellow stripe and down under operating expenses. These are the adjustments that most of these adjustments were discussed by you and approved by you in Tuesday's meeting. The ones that are, say, board discussion were all discussed. There's one other item that's good news, the very last one. It's a $45,000 reduction in budgeted cost. It's called employee medical cost adjustment. This was, I continue to reconcile our new rates and our employee choices against the new plans, and we discovered that the calculation, I updated the calculation in a few places, and we actually are going to experience $45,000 less than we had in the budget that you looked at on Tuesday. So that's just an adjustment. There's no change to anything other than the capturing of the numbers the correct way. So altogether, that's a $310,000 net reduction to the gap. And as it stands right at the moment, we would, and we'll discuss this, something different here in a second, we would use $858,000 if nothing else changed of the $1.2 million. And I know that's not what you want, and we'll talk about that just in 1 second. If we slide over now to the green box, it's called capital budget. So you looked at a $1.8 million proposal that had money coming from under fund sources in column E now, what's marked column E. We carried forward about $1,450,000. We had proposed a 1 cent tax increase to go to capital and proposed using some general fund surplus to pay for the list of projects down below. In column F, you've considered most of these projects and you've eliminated $610,000 worth of them, bringing the amount that's currently in the proposal down to $1,250,000 in round numbers, but you've got three large things yet to discuss in your deliberation that you decided to wait on. So this $610,000 reduction in cost, if we flip down now back to the left at the bottom under the blue stripe, this says scenario. This is a scenario that several of you mentioned. Let's use this $1.2 million that we've got from the Water Sewer Fund over 3 years. Okay, so that's $400,000 a year if you were to average it out over 3 years. So down under this blue stripe, it says, okay, we now have $858,000 of need. If we were to not use 400,000 of that, we would have $458,000 that we need to continue to close the gap. How can we do that? Well, the simplest thing to do is to use the money that you just took out of the capital program, reapply it on the other side of the ledger. So I've line itemed them all, you know, where they come from. So take the 1 cent tax, if you will, that was proposed for capital, and keep it, but keep it over on the operating side. Take the reduction, now that the capital budget is below the carry forward amount, you could take the amount you saved in the carry forward and reapply it back over to the general fund and use it. And you could dip into the general fund balance by another $100,000. And by the way, we have about $1.6 million that we could dip into in the general fund by my estimate and not put us at any sort of risk of our minimum liquidity limits. So we could, just as in this example, in this scenario, only use $400,000 of the $1.2 million if we were to reapply part of most of these capital reductions that you've just made and keep the 1 cent tax over to the operating side. And of course, at your discretion, you could decide to close this gap in a different way. You could decide to, you know, look at expenses and reduce expenses, or not raise taxes and use more general fund. I mean, you have all those options. But this is the snapshot as I have it right now as to where we stand in the budget, and it looks a little bit better than I think we all thought it was going to look. When we were here on Tuesday.
As I said, this is a work in progress. We'll have a lot more when you meet again June 6th. I think my only concern, I know Alderman Spencer mentioned this too, was you're still using some one-time expenses for a recurring expense. And so you go back to, do you raise the tax a little bit higher and not have to worry about that, all of a sudden not having that expense. So,
Yeah,
and let me just add one quick thing, not included in proposed budget, that's the bottom right. Take out that $2 million for street paving, that's a bond, forget it. We'll never make a November ballot, so.
So here's what I struggle with. In 3 years, where will we be without raising taxes? And so I think that what we need to consider is a 2 to 3 cent increase each year for the next 3 years, so that when we get to that fourth year, we've already gotten to equal today. Now, that we might need to make up something then too, but I think that that's going to be pretty much something we have to do in order to be sustainable into the future.
If you don't do that, the gap's gonna get bigger.
All right. I was up late last night. I don't know if that's good or bad. But mentally, and again, I was late last night, I see this as Southport's inheritance. If you got an inheritance, would you spend it all right off the bat? That's all we're going to get. We're no longer going to have water and sewer to juice the people that don't live here and pay our bills. That little trick has gone away. So I'm almost to the point of not using any of it because of what I heard when it comes to the interest that we're generating on the money in the bank. So we use the money one time and it's gone. We hold on to the money, we tighten our belts, we charge a little bit more, we get our money right. The $600,000 in interest that we earned, it was the third or fourth largest revenue that we got. I know that's, but 400,000, so we burnt it. That 400,000 is worth 20,000 in the bank for a year. So we use that as our annuity rather than a quick fix to make us happy. It's just an idea, and I would rather it generate 100,000 a year for 30 years. That's what I would do if I just got $1.5 million. What? So again, you said I heard 1.5 the last meeting, and now you're saying 1.2. Where are we at on that?
Well, 1.2 is the amount that was set aside from the water sewer fund.
What the real gap is.
Well, the real gap right at this moment, right, is $858,000.
No, I think what he's asking you is what is the gap because of the water sewer, and 1.5.
Well, so when we started this process, we looked back and it was in really about the $1.35 million range is where it was, and the board said let's take $1.2 million and set it aside, which we did. If you were just to consider box right now, before the use of the set-aside funds, the gap as it exists today, this is ignoring capital, okay, and capital's is in the $850,000 range because of the fact that we've got the revenue growth that we've gotten just organically, and we haven't done a whole lot we've held tight on raising the expense lines. Now we do have the big need in fire and rescue that's not accounted for. So if you were to presumably say that that's a need that we need to fund, then you're up over $1 million. You're up over $1.2 million again. If you were, the simplest way I think about this is, in today's world, not inflated, but in today's world right now, if you don't use any of your money, you'd need to, if you don't need any of the set-aside money, you'd need to either increase your revenue or reduce your expenses by $860,000, sir.
The last meeting we had two lists. My understanding of the first list is whenever we said you increased the debt side of the equation, which is the capital plan, every time you said no, it reduced it.
It did.
So right now, you're accounting for the $700,000 for the repair project as a even though it's going to be discussed on June 6th, as a debit.
That is correct. It has not been
You can
eliminated.
only base it on what.
That one, we will make that decision on June 6th, according to this document, and two, maybe an opportunity to get funds to pay for that. So there be by June 6th we'll know that. By June 3rd we'll know that. If in fact that money comes to us, $100,000 off, then you're down to 168 maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We're 160.
So just with the one transaction, we could be down to something much more.
Make sure we're all on the same page here with what this capital budget and operating budget, what they represent, right? So as you pointed out, there are other capital efforts out there that are other, what I would like to call other people's money, right? It's not taxpayer, it's not out of our, this capital list, the revenue, the dollars that come out here are the same, they come from the general fund. They come from the same fund as the general fund. So if we have set aside, we are partitioned off in past years, set them aside for capital that remain at $1.4 million. You're talking about depleting that, erasing that capital, we're no longer signing those dollars for capital, moving them back over to the other side of the ledger, to the general fund, and consuming them. That's what you're saying. If that's $700,000, the only way that $700,000 closes the gap is if you decide I'm not keeping it in the capital fund anymore. It won't be available for future capital.
Assume hypothetically we get the money to do the remediation. So we don't have to spend the 700,000. But we kept the 700,000 into the capital fund. As long as we identify something that we're going to use it for, then it still stays there.
Right, and that would not close the gap, because that money would then be earmarked for capital and.
So we'd have to move it over to close the gap.
Correct.
And we could do that. And,
You can.
and we can move it back the other way if we had to.
You could.
And we collect interest on that money while it sits there?
That's correct.
Okay.
All this money is in the same bank account. I mean, it's still there.
Just some questions I have with regards to Alderman Spencer's idea. That would be a significant increase in the amount of tax we would have to charge.
Half cut and half tax. The city, the seven, and again, it's just a suggestion, but we had talked about trying to figure out what life was gonna be like in the new business model. We had 3 branches of income: electric, water, and sewer. We've lost 2/3 of our branches. We need to know what life will be like, what the demand will be on Tom Stanley's crew. Once he does a little bit of work, will we still need that crew at that same size? Once we've started working on roads, once we've started, will it always be a steady demand, or will we catch up? Again, those are questions that we need to find out over a few years. But again, even with if we use the 400, we're getting interest on that money. Let's don't throw it all the way all at one time. Let's don't go broke. So people that can save $1 or $2. Well, Renee said that we're paying about $1,000 a year in city taxes. 1,200. We're paying 1,200 in county taxes. That's not that much for what we have. So mentally, y'all know I drive an old white beat-up truck that squeaks. I'm squeezing out every dime I've got. If I put y'all on my schedule, everybody would hate life if they had to live to my structure. And I try not to do that because it's not fair. Only Renee should have to put up with that. But we could tighten our belt a little bit more. Charge, let's don't go broke so that people, I hate to say this, but people not working and partying and enjoying things, let's save their pocketbook so they don't have to be in pain. Let's go broke so we don't have to do the job that we're here for, to maintain the business of Southport. I know that's not, people are going to talk bad about it. It's good, they will stop harassing a person.
One thing we've got to do here is trying to come up with a way to be creative. We know we don't have any more revenue streams coming in here. What are they? I don't know what they are. We're losing stuff. We are fixed. We got so many people. That's not going to grow. At least I can't see it going. Well, we get 2 or 3 more houses. So we've got to come up with a way to come somewhere. Money's got to come in. All the expenses are going out, and that's increasing. If nothing else, just the rate of inflation. So where's the
Lance.
I'm sorry.
Lance, this idea, this hybrid concept of using the $400,000 a year that Alderman Spencer had mentioned before, and then increasing our tax rate 2 to 3 cents over the next 3 years. Is that, can that?
I think it would work. So 3 cents in round numbers would be in the neighborhood of $450,000. And then another 400,000 or 500,000 the year after that. That does work. And I think that is maybe it is probably one of the least difficult glide paths to this, to consume part of what we did set aside from the water sewer fund for a purpose. You set aside for the water sewer fund for a purpose, to use some of it for that purpose, as well as to some. I think that it's a very wise decision to use it over a period of time, but there is going to be the need to close it up. And my personal advice on this is don't deplete the capital for short-term use, because it is the capital, in my view, should be the main thing we're talking about here, because that's where the big need is and the big dollars are. And if we simply say we're going to drain the capital for a few $100,000s to support this, so we're just mortgaging the future even further.
If we do raise it 2 or 3 cents, how's that gonna affect me sitting out there as a taxpayer? What's it gonna do to my tax rate?
What we'll do is put together for all of you the different types of houses. We'll get that out to you no later than Monday, so you'll see that 1 cent, 2 cent, 3. Well, actually, we've already done 1 cent. So you'll see it, and that'll help you with June 6th meeting.
Was that $44?
145,000 was 1 cent.
On a house.
If I
Oh.
get charged, I think
Something like that. We'll get it for you.
For a value of 250, it was $25.50, somewhere in that
250,
range.
which we don't.
No, not to 25, I'm sorry, a month. Cents more a month. If, for a house that's valued at 250.
$300 a year.
Value,
At a
and then
at a
it
house-
changes, of course.
At a house valued at 300,000,
It's a 250. This is based on their
$250,000.
$1,000 valuation.
There's a $250,000 home here?
Yeah, tax assessed value has nothing to do with what your home's worth. So we see a lot of homes that are selling for, 30 or 40% or more than their tax assessed value. So I don't know how many of them there are, but.
And for 1 cent for the 400,000 home tax valuation was about $364 a year, based on what staff has already given us, the dollar amount. So,
I can just say this, Mayor, because again, for the public's sake, this is a philosophy, and if you do not want to have any more development come into the community, then the only other way is or raise taxes. So that's a decision that you need to let the board know what you want to see, because there isn't any other alternatives. That's the way budgets work. So
Numbers don't work. I apologize. We're paying like 28%.
27 and a half.
27 and a half, okay?
Cents,
So
not per
27 and a
cent.
half percent, and I'm, okay, percent, or cent, or whatever you want to call it, 1 cent, whatever. I pay $1,000 in property tax total for that 27 cent. How can 1 cent cost me $360 more? Anybody follow me on that? That if my total bill for 27 pennies is 1,000, how is 1 more penny going to cost me $360? That doesn't equate with Mark. I went to South Brunswick. I graduated.
no, we will relook at all the numbers
So
and we'll get them to you.
Okay.
All right, but like I said, this is a work in progress. We are still working on this, and come June 6th, you will see probably another different group of numbers.
There is another side of this, of the story, if you just put high density in, and I think Brunswick County has just found this out, that they now need the new high school and middle school. So you can build out all fast as you want to go. But when those two schools cost 150% of your total budget for any one year, that's a lot of infrastructure you got to put in, and a lot of years you're going to wait to get that money back. So there's a balance of how much development you have, and then there is the decision about how to, and Alderman Spencer has said this to me 100 times, how do we go and actually encourage the right businesses on Howe Street and the other business parts of the city? Because there's a lot of lots all the way down here. There's ones that are vacant. There's ones that are that could be built higher or wider or everything else. How do we maximize, how do we do an economic development scheme to look at that? And is there anything that we can do to encourage that? I don't know if there is or there isn't, but there's places to work for the future.
Acknowledge that Alderman Spencer's right. It's $25 a year for 220 valuation, $44 a year. I was looking at it monthly instead of annually. For a $440,000, it's $44 more annually, and then for an $800,000 house, it would be $80 more annually.
Right. That's the simple way to look at it. Is 1 penny would be multiply your value by 0.0001, and that so it's you're right.
Any more, Lance, do you have any more more statements for us?
No, sir, I do not.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Lance? So,
I also, let me just quickly, handed out a lot of the answers to the questions that you had on Tuesday and the attachments which you received yesterday. But I know the fire chief was still working on a lot of his, so I don't know, Mayor, if you want to have him come up.
Chief, are you ready, sir?
I think I provided several answers to questions, and I think Bonnie got them to you, but one that I was working on until about 1 o'clock this morning, I'll just read this to you. As stated several times in budget meetings, there's been a challenge with providing minimum staffing of the department, utilizing volunteers on shifts and paying them a stipend. I had my staff to analyze our scheduling system to provide some data that shows every day that the staffing level dropped below minimum staffing of 4 firefighters. The data from our software, we were able to look at 17 months, the last 17 months, from January 2023 through May 2024. It's proven some major deficiencies in emergency services. The department was below our minimum staffing level of 4 firefighters for a total of 176 days out of 517 calendar days. That is an average of approximately 10 and a half days a month of being understaffed. This is an alarming amount and continues to increase as volunteer presence decreases. In your packet, I believe I got a graph to you. I'm thinking that you got that. Did you? No. It may not have gotten to you because it was kind of late yesterday as well.
I didn't get that number on how many days understaffed.
176 days out of 517 calendar days. I can email all of you. I also had them to do a bar graph of volunteer responses from 2013 to 2023, so 10 years. And you can see how the bar goes down, and I'll email that to you as soon as I sit down. And then in that same graph, it also shows how our call response has went the very opposite way and has went up as the volunteer responses have went down. So with that being said, The National Fire Protection Agency, I've told you this, recommends 15 firefighters to fight a 1,000 square foot residential fire. I'm not advocating, we're not even going to that point. Because somebody asked me, well, what is the end result, Chief? The end result is if we could staff with 4 full-time firefighters, we're going to depend then on our departments, Sunny Point, Oak, James, Boiling Springs, to minimum staffing of those full-time firefighters. So National Fire Protection Agency recommends 15 firefighters to fight a 2,000 square foot residential fire. Adding the 3 full-time firefighters that I've requested, our minimum staffing with 4 firefighters on each shift. This puts us in to not depend on volunteers for. Volunteers will still be needed as well as an automatic mutual aid from our neighboring departments. With the addition, volunteers and mutual aid recommendation and requirement. So I will note, out of 176 days of being deficient of minimum staffing, that we were able to 5 in with administrative staff. So we did try to close the gap. However, then I end up getting called in on the carpet because of overtime. So that's what starts happening. So you either pay Peter or you pay Paul. So then our overtime budget skyrockets when we try to do that. I've had people say, well, just hold the crew over. If you have a minimum staffing of 4 and you don't have a volunteer show up, just hold the crew over. Then we have major issues with overtime. It causes other deficits within our budget due to personnel cost. Because as the overtime goes up, so does the FICA, the retirement, everything skyrockets. So that's where we're at today. I'll entertain questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
But if your overtime goes up, something else goes along with that. Your efficiency starts going down because your people have been on the job so long.
Well, and that's another problem that we're having, Alderman Lay. I appreciate you bringing that up because we have tried in the past to have a policy where a firefighter or an EMT can only work 48 hours consecutively. And you know what happened when we done that? We had huge gaps, even limiting our volunteers. So we had to drop that policy and because some of our volunteers are working 96 hours straight. That's not good. We're going to end up in a very bad predicament with somebody injured or hurt when you have a person, because our EMS, yesterday, for example, we had 4 or 5 calls going at one time. So, I mean, our numbers since COVID on EMS have doubled. So, in a 12-hour period where we were having 5 EMS calls, we're having 10, 12, 14 calls in a 12-hour period.
Boston people cannot respond at the same level of efficiency.
Yes, sir.
Somebody who's fresh. It's just impossible.
Yes, sir. I'm exhausted this morning. I mean, I was up at 1 o'clock this morning on Howe Street on a call, helping the crew because I only had 2 people at headquarters. We're required to put 4 people on a fire call if it involves a structure. I knew that, so I got up out of the bed this morning. Chief Coring, he volunteers. He always is up in the middle of the night helping us with calls. So sometimes sleep is something we love.
How does this affect our, the lack of staffing affect our insurance ratings? Is that
If we do not have at least 4 people on a structural call, our insurance rating will be suspended. They would take our insurance rating from a 3 and we would go to a 10.
Chief, you may want to mention the insurance information you put together.
Yes, and I did do a comparison, and I hope you got that, because I apologize, but I was late on my deadlines yesterday because I was out trying to help answer some calls, and it was a crazy day, and I was late getting some stuff to Bonnie and Dory.
I'll resend it to everybody.
But I did put together a paper on, I contacted 3 insurance companies, and what I done is I got quotes. Now, this is just fire insurance. This does not include wind, hail, homeowners, theft, all that, just fire coverage. And I got them to quote me if we had a 10 rating, a 9, a 6, a 3, a 2, a 1, and it's a significant savings. So, of course, right now we have a 3 insurance rating, and so we're saving on average, we're saving our taxpayers $1,000 to $1,500 a year on their insurance. So that does help with the gap of them paying their fire fee. It helps tremendously, because if we did not have that rating, then that would be much higher.
To a 10, are they going to even be able to get insurance?
You can get insurance, but it would be very, very high. I mean,
$1,000,000
extremely, extremely high. And we did have a department in our county that did not get 4 people on scene, and that was reported to the Department of Insurance, and their rating was suspended for a year. And they had to have a whole new ISO inspection, and it didn't turn out good. It wasn't a good situation.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted, we got that email, and just as an example, so no rating or 10 rating from provider number 1, actually, let's do the average cost. No rating was $3,795. Class E, or excuse me, 3 rating, looks like comes down to $1,000 less.
Yes, sir.
And correct, residential. And then the numbers on commercial, and this is based on 10,000 square feet, goes from $5,659 down to about $3,800.
It's a huge, significant savings on insurance.
We're spoiled. We're absolutely spoiled. We've got a great fire department that saves us a lot of money, but we're still not happy. You mentioned something the other day that I want to repeat. We used to have city employees as members of the fire department, and when we had events, those employees would roll with you. Where did we have a problem with that? What caused the problem? I know there's always a kink that stops us from doing something. Why don't we do that?
Well, the problem was they all aged out and retired or died. At one time, seriously, at one time we had 6 to 9 city employees. I mean, I can name them. There was Eddie Davis, Joe Medlin, Woody McElroy, Mark Sutherland, myself. Todd was full-time on Public Works. So when there was a call, that's what carried us for 25 years. It carried the fire department for 25 years to where we did not have to have full-time staff, because the mayor then, which was a former fire chief, Bill Crow, he had the board pass a resolution that anybody that was a fireman could leave their job and respond to the fire calls. And it carried us for 25 years where we did not have to put money out to hire full-time staff.
I want to help. That's asking a lot. So if you ask a lot, you've got to. So I just would like to consider that, think about that as we move forward. It's an interesting.
Mark, I don't, if that was presented to me, what do you think I'd say? Of course we do it.
I mean,
But we don't have the staff.
Right, the resolution is still on file. If we had firemen that worked in Parks and Rec or Public Services, the resolution's still on file. But we can't make people join. I mean, there's so many requirements now. I mean, these folks that just went through our Citizens Academy, we went over, I mean, the state wants you to have 300 hours training if you're a volunteer or if you're a paid firefighter. 300 hours training to get maximum credit every year. That's a lot of training.
That's 300 hours a year?
A year, yes.
Chief, I had not had a chance to talk to you about this, and I apologize beforehand, because what I'm going to say, you're not going to be prepared to probably respond to me. So, but when I went to the meeting on Wednesday, and I stayed after the meeting was over, and I was talking to some of the other mayors, they're in the same predicament that we are, where, no, they have not maxed out their fire fees. Why they have not done that, I don't know. But the towns are paying tax money to the fire departments, and the fire district is getting the benefit of that, but not doing anything. So I brought that to Representative Miller yesterday in a quick phone call to say, we look at things as just being Southport oriented, but the entire area, which means the entire state, has to have the same issue.
Yes.
So one of the things we discussed is, as soon as we get done with this budget process, is to bring you and the other fire chiefs in from the towns that are interested in participating in this, and not starting in May. Give me a number that I have to make a budget decision on. But how do we go forward is it a fire tax? And with that said, let's use Southport. If you're allowed to do a fire tax, for Oak Island, it's easy because their fire district is their town. They can do whatever they want to. But how would you invoke a fire tax? Who would pull the trigger for that? If it's Southport, it's the rest of the fire district, and it's Caswell Beach. I assume you have to have a board of commissioners, and they would have to agree, and it have to be equal voting or some kind of configuration of all of that. But moving forward, the way that we're doing it now, in my opinion, is we're just filling the holes in dikes really quickly and not looking at how to drain the water behind it, and how do we fix the problem. So my concern now is to get you through the next year. And you may not be able to answer this question. What happens if we just raise the amount of money that the volunteers get when they sign up for a shift? And dramatically, give it a punch. I'm not talking about $5, because we don't have to pay retirement on that money. We don't have to pay all the other things that we pay. But we get you through another year as we try to figure out how do we do this in a more consistent manner in which everybody's paying for the benefit of the fire department. So I would ask you, you don't have to give me an answer now. I would ask you that in the next day or so, if you could think that through, talk to the staff, figure out what would that mean,
Well,
and what number would you talk about?
I will talk about that just a little bit on just an observation that I've had over the last several years that we've struggled with at the department. Currently we pay $150 if you have all your certifications for a 12-hour shift for a firefighter, okay? That's not much. We have some folks that have just worked crazy hours to get that are not full-time staff. So I have full-time firefighters that are making $45,000 a year, and then I have volunteers that are making $60,000 a year on those stipends. So you see.
But I got to get you through a year.
I understand that.
And so
Yes.
the question is that if you raise the money, theoretically, you could tell people there's a cap on how much they can make, and other people would fill that gap because they also would like to make that money.
Right.
So I don't know your personnel, I don't know how they would do things, but I would ask you to at least consider
Right.
that so that we can get you through a year, and we can come back next year early on and figure out how do we pay for, I think you and I are on the same page. We're going to need more professional firefighters as we move forward.
Yes.
But this piecemeal process that we're having now, I'm not sure is the best method, and I'd like to be able to look at a fix.
Yeah,
And
and,
then-
I'll
and
run
how
some
to do that.
numbers, and I'll have some numbers for you on different, cost analysis on that. That's not a problem. But I go back to, I told you in a former meeting, we have about 5 right now that are trying to fill the gap. And the rest of them have full-time jobs, and it's just going to be hard. Even if we go to $200 a shift or $250 a shift, we're still going to face the same thing.
But maybe if you threw those numbers out to the staff, maybe you'd see more sparkle in their eyes, I don't know.
As one who's come from a state and that's just 100% volunteer, there is no paid. There comes a point where I don't care if you offer them $500. They're either going to respond or they're not. If they're young, they've got families, they don't want to go out at night, or they have full-time jobs. I mean, we can look at this, but I don't think it's the panacea. But I know you just want to get through a year, but I'm not sure this is going to do it. You either are the type who responds or you're not.
I'm not sure it's like that cut and dry. I think you have to look at this, the human being involved in your fire department. I would assume mostly are the people who grew up here. And see how they feel about that.
Okay, so we could today impose this tax, essentially, by raising our tax rate. The problem is, it doesn't have the additional people and Southport is subsidizing. And got a shortfall of 160,000 or so in the budget currently, plus.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we've closed some of that and changed those numbers.
Wonderful. And so, but then we also have an additional 389,000 proposed. That's 4 cents just to make that happen. So, I mean, that's the struggle we're facing right now, Chief.
Yes, sir.
It's not that we,
And that 189, Lance, is that within out what is in the budget? Okay, I didn't know if it was.
I understand, but he started off by telling us that under the present model, in the last 517 days, they've had 176 days of understaffed. So that would say to me, the volunteer issues he's talking about are real existing issues, and I don't know how you limp along when we already know, and I'm not good with numbers, but that's got to be at least 25% of the time or more. So that's what I'm saying, is I don't understand how you limp along when we already know.
Well, hopefully if you have, I mean, the theory is that if you raise the 125 to come back with, that you would have more volunteers as opposed to the 5 people you really depend on to do that. And the question is that a workable thing? I just would like him to go back and look at that issue and find out. We have until June 6th to make this decision, and it's not like I'm suggesting we're throwing all of the material out that we already got. It's just something else to add to it. But I do have a quick question about your EMS.
Yes.
So we doubled the number of calls. Is that because the county's not showing up anymore? Is that because our people are falling over and falling down on the sidewalk? What's causing, why would we just have a 100% increase in calls?
Well, I talked to other fire chiefs, and it's not just Southport, it's everywhere. It's just an aging population in our county. We're having more people, and the call volume is just increasing like dramatically.
Well, that'll have to be part of the discussion if we deal with Raleigh about how do we fix this problem, because the conversation always goes back to one that I know you cringe at: fire trucks and this and that, and they're talking about things that happened years ago, and they got it in their minds, but we got to move forward as to the realities of today. And what are the new world order fire EMS cost to us? So we welcome all that information.
Real quick, I don't know whether it is or not, but whoever drove off the bulkhead the other night probably didn't live in Southport.
No, sir, they did not live in South.
But we had all our resources out there saving someone that doesn't pay a single tax.
Right,
And you do that every day with people walking up and down the streets visiting us.
yes.
So the outside is wearing on us every asset we have.
Yes, and one good thing about the situation the other night is we have a mechanism now where we can charge that insurance company for that vehicle. Because we had multiple resources, and I mean, we put a firefighter in the water that saved the man's life, and
I would like to get an insurance quote on our pier as well. Let's see if they would like to pay some of that.
Same thing, depending on which state you came from, is that, as the chief has informed me, our fire departments don't collect money for hazmat stuff. So if the gas tank breaks open at the car accident, you have to call somebody out of Wilmington to come do that?
we have a regional team. We utilize Sunny Point a lot for hazmat, but if
They
it's
can do
something-
that?
Yes, sir. But if it's something larger, then we call a regional team out of Wilmington to come and help us. We're certified as hazmat technicians with our firefighter 1 and 2 training, but I mean, we're limited to what we can do.
Another aspect, because where they do that, they make a fortune on
Yeah,
that stuff.
we've put in a couple new mechanisms over the last year, and that's one reason why our fire inspection fees has went up to, I got a new quote on that and gave it to Bonnie. I think we're going to be able to collect like $82,000 next year, because when we go to like these gas leaks where a contractor has dug a hole and they've hit we can start charging that contractor, not the homeowner that pays a fire fee, but we can start charging that contractor that didn't call and get the lines marked, you know. So there are some mechanisms to be able to do that. So you know, when we start charging fees, I don't want to charge anybody in Southport for coming to their house for a fire alarm. But if their fire alarm is broken, we've had to go there 4 times in a week, that we've got a mechanism now where we can charge that.
For that as well.
Yes, we've started doing that. Yes, sir.
Because I think in law enforcement, they do that, like with bank alarms, if it's malfunctioning. I don't know if Southport can charge anybody, but it's a fee that's pretty typical across the country.
Right.
I hate to be if we found a way to afford some of what you've requested for both fire and EMS, it's better than what we have right now.
Some is better than none. Yes, sir, I agree.
I think for me, even though Chief Drew is the point person for EMS as well as fire, how we think of the expenditures has to be totally different. Our citizens need to decide if they want to pay for EMS. The county has EMS. We can do away with EMS. It's not, small municipalities like us typically would not even have EMS, but because we were historically the county seat, all of that evolved. So so for me, the discussion, the idea that it's $400,000 more for these 6 positions, we're talking about the fire department being less than $200,000 more for the 3 they need, and EMS, but EMS is a luxury in a community like us. So I would say that let's ask the citizens to give us input. We increase taxes based on being able to pay for that additional EMS separate and apart from this whole budget, because it doesn't, if we're going to continue to provide this service and make it more robust or whatever, depending on what citizens are demanding in the community, then I think there's a price tag to that that's separate from fire. I think we're looking at this as some big increase for the fire department when in fact it's 2 different departments. The
Right,
chief is
that is
just
true.
acting as a point person for that. So that's what occurs to me about that.
Go ahead.
One thing that leaps out at me is either EMS or fire. Something happens at your house and Chief Drew is understaffed. You don't have the people, they can't respond, they're working overtime. Somebody, let's say the response time is 4 minutes. If that response time goes to 6 minutes because you are understaffed, there are going to be a lot of unhappy people out there. Now, if somebody's got to make a decision, are you willing to put forth a few extra dollars to get him staffed up to where he needs to be, or are you going to wait in that 2 minutes, something bad could happen? So you got to look at your values. Which one do you want? And this may cost you money, but it's up to you. I don't like spending money, but if I fall over in the floor, I'd like for you to get there in 4 minutes as opposed to 6.
Yes, sir.
If we're going to find out from the citizens, I think we need to give them the data on, okay, this is the response time when we have the EMS here versus the, I guess, statistical analysis of typical response time to Southport of county.
Yes.
I mean, we have an extraordinarily good response time.
Yes. And two observations. One, we're required to have a fire department, okay? By law, we have to have a fire department. We don't have to have an EMS department. However, we need to look at the geographical location of Southport and the reason why we still have an ambulance service and we do respond on EMS calls. We are at the end. You know, we're at the end of the county. It's a dead end road, and response times from county services, that's the whole reason I proposed about bringing the paramedics in, was because of the response times of getting a paramedic unit here. So yes, Alderman Davis, I totally agree. If we do something like that, we have to present all the data so people understand completely. We are.
You have to cross water to get to us over bridges or by ferry. And if those are out, and we've had that situation, how does a county EMS unit get to us?
We could certainly put together a piece such that Cheyenne and Chief Drew did on your request for the fire fee, and we'll do something very similar for EMS, because I think the fact sheet is going to be very helpful.
Are there
And the total tax money that's required to do this.
One more question. Chief, where's the closest EMS unit for Southport?
Well, so there's base 4 is across from St. James over behind Generations Church. There's a base there. Base 5 is at Boiling Springs. And then they do have an EMS truck that runs out of one of Oak Island's fire stations that they house there. However, understanding the EMS system with the county, those trucks are forever moving. If there are 2 calls going on right now in Calabash, they may call base 4 and say, move to Highway 211 and 17. If there's 2 calls going on in Leland, they may call base 5 and say, you're going to move your paramedic unit to 87 and 17. So those trucks, even though those bases are there, does not mean that they have trucks there, ambulances there. Another caveat to the county EMS system, night before last, they took 3 of their ambulances down because they didn't have staffing. So three of their ambulances was shut down, so that meant they had to move trucks strategically to try to cover calls, but they're having the same problem we're having, even having staffing.
The mayor said at the mayor's meeting Wednesday, the topic came up that it's a problem for everyone. So as a whole, we all need to address this as a group.
Any other questions of the fire chief? Chief Drew, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
The next agenda item is the MOU for Up Your Arts. I don't know if you have the most current one. Okay. So the MOU basically says, and the MOUs have always said since 2017, which was when the first one with Up Your Arts was started, which was, 7 years ago, that either side can terminate it within 60 days. So Up Your Arts announced to the world that they had moved off this topic and had given it the authority to another organization. The MOU is not transferable. This is just a procedural thing, just so we can officially end it. So I would entertain a motion to instruct the manager to write up a document to terminate the MOU with Up Your Arts.
Just to be clear, I think that the MOU requires 60-day notice, so we're instructing the city manager to give notice in writing to Up Your Arts. And so this, as the mayor said, is just procedural, needs to be taken care of, and so I make the motion that we instruct the city manager to give notice.
Second? There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect that it was 5-0, please. Topic we need to figure out is some dates. So I had emailed all of you. We may need a third date, but we need at least 2 dates. One, the first one is we have to have a date to finalize the budget. And after we finalize, well, actually, we do this public hearing first. I apologize. We have to pick a date for the public hearing, and then we have to pick a date to finalize the budget. And so, I don't know if I'm catching Sarah off guard or not. Sarah, do you have any suggestion on these dates? Have you all, I know I got Karen's, Mark said he was going to be here. Were there any issues between, you have one issue for half a day, which I actually have the same issue, between June 6th and June 12th?
That's for the first,
Well, we have to put them both in that 1 week. We have to jam them in.
Mayor, it might help if I put this into a little context. We checked with the county. The deadline for getting in the tax rate for Southport is June 30th by noon. I would not recommend that. So back that up a good week or so, that you need to have a definite tax rate, so we get it to the county in sufficient time. So then you have, before that, you have to have the public hearing on whatever you're going to propose. We could have it June 13th, which is your regular meeting, but you also then have to back up. The public has to see the document ahead of time so they can comment on something. So that means you're looking at trying to adopt a budget. You have the afternoon of the 6th, you already have a meeting. I would think you got to do the 7th in the afternoon, but you're probably going to need another day in order to get that, if you're going to stick with the 13th. Now, you can always set up a special meeting date for the public hearing, and that'll give you a little bit more time. That's up to you.
wise to give the public the opportunity to have full chance to talk about it, digest it, and so on, and not pack it into our already packed regular meetings. Why don't, a suggestion, why don't we have that public hearing on, has June the 10th suit everybody, or the 12th? We have a meeting on the 13th.
Now, I go later than the 13th, not before, because you've got a lot of decisions to make.
We have to make decisions for them to opine on.
Decision, we have to do the final decision, so they have what we think is the draft. Right. So the week of the June 14th, 17th, 18th, if we had the public hearing on, say, I don't know, the 18th, or I don't have a calendar in front of me. Yeah, if, the 18th, and then, sure. And then that way it gives us time to have meetings ahead in case we need to have another meeting because we can't come to consensus or we need more information. to get the draft out, and then that gives a week back from that. 18 gives like the 11th is a week back from 7 days back from that. So if we can get our stuff.
Dory, you all
together.
right with that, those dates? Work? Because Dory's got some info that we can make sure we're within guidelines.
About having the public comment on June 18th in the evening. And can we get a room?
June 18th, both this building and Southport Community Building is already booked. On June 18th, both Indian Trail Meeting Hall and Southport Community Building are already booked. So June 18th will not work in the evening. 19th. The 19th is free and clear in the evening.
About the 17th, that's a Monday.
The 17th will be available after 4 p.m. in the community building.
So were you looking at June 19th or 17th? 17th. At night? At night.
The 18th is Parks and Recreation Committee meeting at 6 o'clock. Why didn't we like the 19th? Why didn't we like the 19th? Exactly, okay. So we're looking at the Monday, the 17th? That's it? Yeah? Works for me.
And good,
Yes.
building-wise?
6 p.m. start, yes.
6 p.m. Awesome. And that'll just be a special meeting. Well, it will be a public hearing. Okay. Cheyenne?
No, community center.
The community building.
Okay, so now if we want to back into this, that means, Dory, they're going to have the budget proposed rate to give people enough time by the 10th.
Supposed to notice it 10 days before the public hearing.
It has to be 10 days?
Yes,
Wow, that's the 7th, huh?
yeah.
Oh, you got a lot of work.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
First.
Either that or the 20th or the 20th, the 20th?
Oh, we could do it in the evening then.
What is the 20th open?
The 20th is a planning board meeting in the evening, and I will not be able to film because I film the planning board meetings in the community building. Evening of the 21st is available, though. I do know that is a Friday.
You can have the public hearing before you have a final product. So if you have a proposed budget, you can have a public hearing and hear the public. You can still make adjustments after that before you adopt it.
But you got to have some time.
Yes.
Then they don't have enough time to put, I don't think. I mean, if you guys really know what you want to do, you could do the 6th and the 7th for afternoon meetings, but wow, that's a lot of work. I'm gonna have a whip on you guys. You already have the 6th in the afternoon, so if you add the 7th in the afternoon, 7th, there's a room, Ms. Cheyenne?
You said on the 7th?
Yeah,
No,
you are not helpful, Cheyenne.
I'm very sorry. We have both, there's a meeting in here and a rehearsal in the community building. We cannot film in there.
Oh, boy. Yeah. The only other thing, I don't know if you want to do this, is you just stay on the 6th till you get it done. I know.
It might not be productive because we may need additional information.
Well, plus a
What
lot
if
of
we-
you are gone and we gotta,
and get it.
When we make the announcement on the 7th, that we're having the meeting on the, whatever date it was, the 17th, do we have to put all the data out, or we just have to make an announcement of the date?
Notice has to be published 10 days before, and you have to state in the notice that there is a proposed budget available for public viewing.
Okay.
What if we did the 5th, I mean, we've got a meeting the morning of the 5th. Could we, no?
That's pretty brutal.
Cheyenne, where are we having the meeting on the 5th?
It is in the community building at 9 a.m. and there is nothing later that day, so it is currently still open, in the afternoon, I mean.
So if we did the morning meeting, agenda, then have lunch, and then
I already had y'all on the schedule from 9 to 3 that day anyway.
I'd do that. It's break for lunch. At 1?
well, you're gonna be there in the morning, and then we'll take a break for lunch, and then start at 1. If you're done with the morning.
We're holding out afternoons of the 6th and the 7th as well.
The 6th is going to be, but the 7th is not.
The 7th wasn't gonna work, Bill.
No go.
So the 6th, and then,
Well, the 7th is just... It's just us, right? I mean, it would be just us in a room. So is the,
well, it's a public meeting.
well, yeah, but is Nash Street open?
Can you film?
Since all of your public meetings, it was agreed that you were going to film them, you have the option to not film, but you have to put a notice out saying, this is a public meeting, but it will not be filmed. So we've done that before.
But is the Nash Street fire building, is that because of the concrete that you can't film, or
I
is
just-
it a secret?
I don't have the ability to take the equipment over there.
Oh, okay.
Where can you go? Just here in the
Indian Trail
community
Meeting
building?
Hall and Southport Community Building.
We're going to do public hearings and all this other, it's not like and if we just have one meeting that we're not taping, then I think if we announce that,
Can you record in the fire station, chief? You've got internet and can we do that from y'all do streaming from the fire station ever?
No, we don't.
Cheyenne's the expert, not the chief. Because it's her.
But it is, why don't you do it there? Is
I am-
technical problems or?
I am one person and it takes a lot of manpower to get everything moved from building to building.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yes, sir.
So we've got 2 confirmed dates at this point, the 5th and the 6th. Public hearing on the 17th. And if we need to add a third, let's talk about it later.
Just do not book anything else in your lives, nothing.
All right, so I'm good with that, so we can talk amongst ourselves about trying to figure out whether or not we have to add manpower. I don't care if we have an all of government, everybody does a conga line to the firehouse. If it's only carting equipment to the firehouse is the only exception, then we need to figure a way to help you out. I'm not asking you to carry it on your back. That's,
We'll talk about it.
yes. All right,
What was the time on the 5th?
9 o'clock.
You got a regular meeting in the morning, you're gonna then have lunch, and then you're just gonna stay the day with us, let's put it that way.
So are we, I don't think we need a motion for any of this, do we? No. All right. All right. So we only got like 7 minutes left, so my question to you is, what do you want to do?
Just do mayor's comments and board comments, and then we're gonna have to get out of here. And so we'll discuss this at another time.
Yep.
We're gonna have to,
Question.
because we
Okay.
just gotta get out of here.
Can you send us an updated list of the meetings?
Sarah will do that.
A quick question. Does the 17th give us enough time to put out public notice with publicizing the budget?
If you're done by, you've got to be, she's got to be able to publish on the 7th. 7th or 8th, Dory?
7th.
All right, the mayor's comments. I only have one mayor's comment, and that is something for us all to consider. I would ask the manager to get us the Franklin Art Gallery document. I don't know if it's an MOU, I don't know if it's a contract, I'm not sure what it is. But I've been led to believe, though I've never seen the document, that they're on the hook for all the repairs inside the building.
It's on the way.
So that issue is there's $19,000 plus in this thing, that things that are considered to be, needed to be done this next fiscal year. So I need to make sure that if that's the case, then they need to be put on notice that that's coming down the line. So we'll have to take some action to ask them to do this stuff, or to tell them to do this stuff, but just keep it in mind. That's all I have. Thank you. Alderman Mosteller.
And I don't know, Bonnie, if this is, we don't really have time for me to go into my questions about the classification and compensation study and how it might affect budget and stuff, because we're out of minutes. But I will save that then for the 5th, I guess. So,
Yes, I'll get in touch with you later. 'Cause
Okay.
I know you're leaving Sunday, right?
yeah, Monday, yeah.
Monday, okay.
Alderman Carroll. Davis.
Public reminder that May the 27th, Monday, May the 27th is Memorial Day. The Memorial Day Parade begins at 11 from the Longshoremen's Building parking lot, proceeds as a parade over to John N. Smith Cemetery, and that's where the ceremony is. And that night at 7:30 begins the communities, different people and organizations in the community lower the flag and play taps at 7:30, the flag that's down by the waterfront. And that continues from Memorial Day till Labor Day.
Alderman Spencer. Alderman Lay. I entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor?